Section 6. Flaws in Functionalism. Gray summarizes this key functionalist contention as follows, quote, "Firstly, for any discriminable difference between qualia, there must be an equivalent discriminable difference in function. There is also a complementary inference. Second, for any discriminable functional difference, there must be a discriminable difference between qualia." End quote. He concludes that for functionalists, quote, "two different qualia cannot be associated with the same function, nor two different functions with the same qualia." End quote. Gray then proceeds to attack these functionalist principles on the basis of research he did into the phenomena of word color synesthesia. Synesthesia is a condition in which stimuli presented in one sensory modality give rise to sensations in another. One of the most common such non-normal associations between the senses is word color synesthesia, sometimes called colored hearing. In this condition, when the synesthete hears or sees a word, she sees, in addition, in her mind's eye, a color or multicolored pattern. As Gray comments, quote, "There is no evidence that the experienced color plays any functional role in the synesthete's auditory or visual processing of words. Indeed, the experienced color may actively interfere with such processing. Thus, there is no relationship between the occurrence of the synesthete's color experiences and the linguistic function that triggers them. This conclusion is incompatible with the functionalist analysis of conscious experience." End quote. The phenomena of word color and number color synesthesia, therefore, clearly violates the functionalist principle of same functions, same qualia. Another challenge to this functionalist position, though this time from the opposite direction, comes from the phenomenon of blindsight. In this curious condition, people who have suffered damage to the specifically visual areas of the brain or the pathways leading to them, and who claim to have no conscious experience of seeing, are yet able, when encouraged to do so, to perform almost as normal in terms of reporting what is in their apparently blind visual field. In other words, the blindsight sufferer has the function of sight, but none of the qualia, which according to functionalism should be associated with it. This is, of course, the opposite problem from the word color synesthete, who has qualia which have no apparent function at all. This challenge to functionalism is made even stronger if we consider that similar dissociations have been discovered in all the sensory modalities. Lawrence Weiskrantz is one of the leading researchers into blindsight and other sensory dissociations, such as deaf hearing and amnesiacs who can, when pressed, remember almost everything one would expect them to. Given the existence of all these phenomena, Weiskrantz raises the possibility of a condition which could be called a true zombie. Weiskrantz explains that it would be theoretically possible for one individual to have damage to all their sensory modes, or perhaps to a single awareness module. As he comments, quote, "One would be left with just a bundle of implicit processes, a true zombie, if you will," end quote. Weisskrandt emphasizes that he's never found such a case, having studied tens of thousands of neurological case reports. However, for our purposes, even the possibility of the true zombie, again and from the opposite direction, violates the functionalist claim of an inviolable link between functions and qualia. Gray therefore concludes that qualia cannot be identified with functions and cannot be reduced to cybernetics. He comments that, quote, "This conclusion has some interesting consequences, especially if one considers it alongside one reached earlier, that qualia and intentionality are doubly dissociable. For there is every reason to expect that familiar cybernetic principles can fully account for meaning and intentionality. However, if these principles cannot account at the same time for qualia, then one may conjecture that the relationships between meanings and the qualia in which meanings come clothed are more or less arbitrary. There are two separate realms of intentionality to which this conjecture has potential application. In the first, language, it is almost self-evidently true. In the second, perception, it is, in contrast, strongly counterintuitive," end quote. We shall look at this relationship between meaning and qualia in the next unit.